You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by Amac, the Association of Mature American Citizens.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your Amac podcast, Better for America. And today we have a real leader with us, congressional member representing Georgia's 1st District, Mr. Buddy Carter. Now, Congressman Carter is someone who has spent time in the private and public sector, and he knows issues from healthcare to municipal government, how pharmacies are run, to how congressional committees are run. And he is a recognized expert on energy, member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, as well as the U.S. House Budget Committee, which sets the budget numbers for the nation. Now, interestingly, he may be the only member of Congress who represents the entire coastline of a state. So Congressman Carter has a unique window on the environment, oceans, maritime commerce, climate change, and national security. We're so happy to have you with us, Congressman. Thank you so much for joining AMAC's podcast today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. It's an honor to be with you.
Well, thank you so much. And our 2.4 million members do appreciate the good work that you do each and every day. Congressman, your views on so many topics are really valuable. And I want to start where you started, really, in healthcare, because you have the extraordinary experience of really running a business, a pharmacy, serving your community for more than 3 decades. And I can only imagine what it was like where people brought their very lives to you, really trusted in you, and you helped them. And you had to likely fight sort of a battle against government overregulation. So would you help our members understand what it's like to be a businessman in healthcare? And even though that was several years ago, what do we need to do to make the entire healthcare system more user-friendly, affordable, compassionate, and explain to us some of the government overreach and regulations that you had to manage?
Well, that's a great way to start. And I appreciate the opportunity to share that with you. As you indicated, I had the honor of serving my community. I was in business for over 32 years. And, when people trust you with their health care, that's the most important asset. And, we always say, if you've got your health, you got everything. And it's a big responsibility. I was very blessed to serve a great community and very blessed to have a business. And, pharmacists are the most accessible healthcare professionals in America. There's a pharmacy within 5 miles of almost every American. And that makes a big difference in having that access to healthcare. And that's why I'm so proud of our profession and everything that we've been able to accomplish in the profession. Now, it has changed a lot. You've seen the proliferation of the chain drug stores, and really what has happened has been that we've seen in the healthcare system what we refer to as vertical integration, and that is where you have an insurance company that owns what we call a PBM, a pharmacy benefit manager. They're the ones who kind of manage the pharmacy benefits for companies, for insurance companies, and they in turn own the pharmacies. Well, what that leads to is to a situation where, they're cutting out the independent retail pharmacies. And that's really not good, because although the chain pharmacies certainly do a good job, the independent retail pharmacies really provide a service that is needed by many people, particularly in the rural areas, particularly where they don't have access to healthcare as much as they do in the urban areas. So, but you even have some urban deserts, if you will, that we refer to as urban healthcare deserts. But with the proliferation of third-party payers, where most people have insurance to pay for their medications, then what happens is when you have that situation, then you lose a little bit of your freedoms. And when I say that, I mean your choices. You don't have the choice of where you can go. You have to go where your insurance tells you to go. And that's really unfortunate. Many times it's in mail order. And that's not good, because you lose that relationship that you have built up over the years with your pharmacist or with the healthcare provider. And it's not only true in pharmacy, it's especially true in pharmacy, but it's especially true also throughout the healthcare system.
Yeah, we understand what that means in a sense, in that AMAC is fighting back against these big PBMs that really act as third-party middlemen that increase ultimately the cost of drugs. And AMAC is all about fighting for price transparency and easy access to affordable drugs, especially for those seniors on fixed income. So we appreciate your perspective there. AMAC fights every day at the federal and state level for greater accountability and for lower prescription drug prices and a greater connection between the needs of older members and the US government. So now we're also fighting for national solvency, and we see Congress is really drifting further and further away from caring about national solvency. And we see the enormous debt, $30 trillion. Now, this is a number that I think people have trouble understanding, myself included, just how much money that really is. This is massive spending, and there's often a sense that no one is listening. So how important is it to get our nation back on fiscal track, really out of debt, and stop these massive deficits, this massive, endless, what seems to be endless federal spending?
Well, that's a great question. And look, as a father, as a grandfather, I will tell you that this is intergenerational theft. That's exactly what we're doing here by going this much in debt and leaving these kind of debts to our children, to our grandchildren, and to their children. It's almost as if we're digging a hole so deep that they'll never get out of it. We've got to be more fiscally responsible. We've got to cut up the credit cards in Washington, D.C. We've got to start being more responsible with our spending and making sure that we're not encompassing all of this debt because and encumbering all this debt, because at some point someone's going to have to pay for this. It's easier said than done. I recognize that, and it's going to take some really tough decisions and some really tough actions in order to get this under control. But we have to do it. $30 trillion. I don't think people realize just how much money that is. I mean, it would take us years and years, decades, in order to get out of this hole that we're in. One of the things that they taught us in the Georgia State Legislature when I first got up there was that when you're in a hole, quit digging. Well, we're in a hole and we need to quit digging. We need to start being more responsible, cut up the credit cards, and see how we can decrease our national debt. And because it won't be very many years down the road. In fact, it'll be only a couple of years down the road where we'll be paying more on the interest on our debt than we'll be putting toward defense.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because the interest alone is going to be very hard for us to manage. And people can relate to that. If you just consider your own personal debt, if you have a credit card and you're running up, you're charging and overcharging, oftentimes we can only make the minimum payment. And that minimum payment oftentimes is the interest on that big amount of money that you owe. And so in the same way, the government has got to recognize first and foremost that this is a runaway train. And I'm very pleased to see that Manchin has stood tall and has said, no, this Build Back Better bill is not good for America in the long run. And not only is the spending bad, but the way in which they want to spend the money, really creating an entitlement state, it seems. Our members are dead set against that. So, Congressman, thank you again for your frankness there and for your insight. I do want to move to another issue of importance and tap into your unique representation of coastal Americans in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, the variety of issues that really are tied to coastal America, from protecting our environment to commercial fishing and maritime commerce, and you're engaged in setting budgets that affect America's coastlines and perhaps also affect our national security in the waters. Now, if we could unpack these issues for a moment, what do you think are the biggest commercial issues that we're facing on the coasts? Would it be, for example, inflation, the supply chain, international trade fairness? What environmental or climate related issues strike you as being very important?
Well, all of those things that you mentioned are interrelated. I mean, when you talk about the supply chain, and we know we've had supply chain issues, in the 1st Congressional District of Georgia, which, as you indicated earlier, encompasses the entire coast of Georgia, over 101 miles of pristine coastline. But we've got 2 major seaports, the Port of Savannah, which is the number 3 container port in the country, and the Port of Brunswick, which is the number 1 roll-on, roll-off port as far as trucks and vehicles go. And both of those are extremely important to our economy down here. Just recently, because of supply chain issues, we've had ships backed up off the coast. I was at the Georgia Ports Authority in Savannah last week, and when it first started backing up, we had over 31 ships backed up, just waiting to get into the harbor. And we've gotten that down now to around 6, but still, that's a supply chain issue that leads to less inventory is on the shelf, which leads to inflation. That inflation, of course, has a big impact on everyone. So the supply chain, the inflation, all of these things are interrelated and have an impact on our economy and have an impact on our area.
Yeah, that is so true. And you having a seat on the Budget Committee, Energy and Commerce, and really seeing this from your district, we appreciate your thoughts on that and the reality of it all. Something needs to change. We recognize that. It starts with leadership, really. We've got to get the right people elected in office who can recognize the issues and then make smart decisions to make sure that we are putting America first. I want to move to another issue that seems to really have people's attention, especially now. It's top of mind for so many. The federal vaccine mandates. Now we see that they're really being seriously buffeted by the U.S. courts, and that they appear to be coming under a lot of increased scrutiny and criticism by governors, business owners, and everyday Americans. And I think the arguments that we're hearing is that these mandates are slowing down the economy and also violating constitutional rights, potentially both at the state and individual level. Where do you come down on the constitutionality of these federal mandates and then the broader overreach by the executive, by this president?
Well, I don't think there's any question that the mandates are unconstitutional, and I think the courts will hold that up. In fact, many courts have already held it up. Now, it will eventually probably end up in the Supreme Court, and they'll have to make the final decision. Please understand, I'm an advocate for the vaccine. I went through the clinical trials myself. I made that choice. I wanted to set a good example as a healthcare professional, member of the Doctors Caucus, a member of Congress. I wanted to set a good example, and I did, and I'm still going through the clinical trials. In fact, it's a 26-month commitment, so I've got another year left on my commitment to that clinical trial. I fill out a healthcare ledger every week telling about how I'm feeling. I've gotten a booster, I've gotten all of it. I think it's safe and it's effective. However, the decision on whether you want to get a vaccine or not should be a decision between you and your doctor, between you and your pharmacist, you and your family, not between you and the federal government. I understand that people have hesitancy, and I understand the various reasons for that. But this is another indication of how the Biden administration is trying to control your healthcare decision-making. And they should not, the federal government should not be doing that. Keep in mind that this is the same Joe Biden who was vice president during the Obama administration when they tried to take away our healthcare insurance. Now they're trying to take away our healthcare decisions. Well, again, this is a personal decision. I hope everyone will consider it. I hope you'll talk to your doctor, your pharmacist. Again, I feel like it's safe and effective, but that's a decision you have to make on your own. It should not be a decision that's mandated by the federal government. And no, I do not think it's constitutional, and I think the Supreme Court will rule in that favor.
Our members certainly agree with you there that the whole idea of forcing people to do something, it's wrong, it feels wrong, it sounds wrong. The other issue here too is the language I think that we hear coming out of Joe Biden, and that is really pitting American against American. If you're not vaccinated, don't you dare. Those are the people who are causing all the problems, when we in fact know that many people who are vaccinated do get a second bout, or they're infected with COVID or one of the variants. And to suggest that you ought to, test people before you have a Christmas, I don't know. I think that those are decisions that should be left up to each individual person and their family members, and the government really has no place inserting their opinion there, and certainly pitting people against one another. We're divided enough already, it seems, that we've got so many differences. Let's find where some common ground here. I'm with you too. Amac is, supports the vaccine, and we agree that the vaccine is probably a good thing for most people. But the mandate, we are entirely against, and we do think that that is not constitutional. So we'll have to watch and see what unfolds in the coming days. Thank you for your candor there, Congressman. Now, I know that you and I maybe have touched on this before, but you do know a lot about energy and the economy, microeconomics and macro. And I think one issue on everyone's mind as we look at a really tough winter and at the end of energy independence, under the Democrats, unfortunately, my concern is this: how worried should we be about oil, gas, and heating costs? And do you foresee any relief for seniors on fixed incomes or those with limited savings?
Well, what I see is a hard time. And the reason for this is because of the Biden administration's war on fossil fuels. I mean, look, I believe in climate change. I believe we need to address it. We need to address it in a responsible way. And I would submit to you that the United States of America has done just that. You realize that we in the United States have decreased our carbon emissions more in the past decade than the next 12 countries combined. I mean, and all that time that we've done that, we've been growing our economy. So it can be done. But I will tell you that this is a self-imposed mistake. This is the Biden administration and what they are doing by this war on the fossil fuels is causing inflation. You see it with the increase in the price of gasoline. Gas is up 57% now. We're going to see it this winter, as you indicated, with the natural gas and with heating oil. And who is it going to impact the most? It's going to impact the ones who are on fixed incomes, the working class people, the middle class people, the upper class people. They can afford this, but those who can least afford it are the ones who are going to be penalized the most and the ones who are going to suffer the most. And now this administration is talking about a natural gas tax, which will add even more to the inflation that is gripping our nation right now, and that's gripping the energy sector. There are things that we can do that we could and we need to be doing that will help us. I've always said that, when you are talking about climate change, you got to have three things. You got to have adaptation, mitigation, and innovation. We all know what innovation means. Yeah, the state of Georgia right now, we are number 7 in the use of solar power. Solar power is great. I believe in wind power. However, you've got to have that base load power. Right here, north of my district, we have the only 2 nuclear reactors that are under construction right now in the United States. We need nuclear energy. That's going to be something that we have to have as base load energy. You've got to have fossil fuels in order to have that base load energy. You can't depend on solar and wind by itself. Now, it does have a place in our portfolio, and we should utilize it, but it's not at a point, nor is it going to be at a point anytime in the near future where we can rely on it totally. One last thing about the adaptation and mitigation. I like to give these examples all the time about adaptation. We know that we're having sea level rises on the coast. We see it. There's a barrier island outside of Savannah in Chatham County, Tybee Island. Well, there's only one road going out to Tybee Island. Right now, when we have spring tides, when we have king tides, that road floods, and we have to close it down. Not because of rain, but because of the rising tides. Well, they're talking about rebuilding it right now. And what we have to do is we got to build it up. We got to adapt to what is happening here. The same thing goes with trying to mitigate what's happening through the climate change as well. I give the example of a house. If you build a house on a slab next to the marsh, guess what? It's going to flood at some point. We got to be smarter. We got to have our building codes, our building regulations to build those houses up so that FEMA doesn't have to buy them 2 or 3 times every time they flood. But just being smart about some of those things, we can really save ourselves so much. Yes, we need to do all we can for renewable energy. We need to do all we can for clean energy, but we're not at the point where we're going to be able to eliminate it entirely. We have to have some dependence on base load energy.
Very well said. Thank you, Congressman. I do have one more question, if I may. AMAC members are so active in Georgia and nationwide, And as you know, we are very proactive and grateful for those who are real leaders and real patriots as you are. So as we look forward into 2022 and even into late 2022, how do you think we can assure that America's traditional voices, those voices that believe in freedom, that believe in our God-given rights, that believe in free markets, the vast reservoir of common sense and compassionate and patriot voices, when will those voices get heard? Do you think that we'll see a change in 2022? And do you think that the US House and Senate will change leadership, move from Democrat to Republican in 2022?
I'm very confident that the House is we're going to have a red tsunami. I'm very confident of that. We got to work hard. We got to make sure that we get our points out. We got to make sure that we get our message out, and it's got to be on point. However, I'm telling you, the Democrats are playing into our hands right now. I mean, look at Joe Biden and this administration, everything they do. When you talk about what's going on at the southern border, when you talk about what's going on with energy, I mean, we had energy independence and he's thrown that away, done away with it. I'm old enough to remember the late 70s when we recognized that we were too dependent on the Middle East for our energy needs and we needed to have energy independence, and we've achieved it, even to the point where we had energy dominance, and yet they've thrown that away, doing away with the Keystone XL pipeline, which eliminated tens of thousands of jobs, as well as made us more dependent on other countries for our oil needs. And we're asking the Middle East to increase their production. That is ridiculous. That is a self-imposed error right there that should have never happened. Yet the Nord Stream pipeline, and we're advocating for that. And natural gas from Russia this natural gas that we have here in America is 41% cleaner than what they're using over there. Yet we're going to allow them to go ahead and build the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. It's just ludicrous what's going on in the energy sector. It's ludicrous what's going on with our border. I mean, we've got people who are coming across that border unvaccinated, untested, yet we're telling Americans, or not we, but the administration is telling Americans that if you don't get your vaccine, you're going to be fired. That's just ridiculous. Then you got the illegal drugs that are coming across that border, infesting our community. So where can we make a difference? First of all, we can make our voices heard. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, our voices can be heard at the ballot boxes. That's where we make the difference, by going out, making sure we exercise one of the greatest freedoms that we have in this country, and that's for a vote, to vote. And we can do that by electing people who are going to speak up and who are going to stand for conservative values, because that's what we've got to have in this country. So I'm very confident that we're going to take over the House. I hope that we can do the same thing in the Senate. I know that we've got a Senate race here in the state of Georgia next year. We're very confident that we're going to have a great Republican candidate and that we're going to be able to take one of those seats back in the Senate.
Well, I'm with you there. I feel it. I feel the red tsunami coming, and AMAC is going to do all that we can between now and into the future to ensure that we have integrity in our elections. We've got to be sure that we don't see a federal takeover of our elections, because we know that many of those on the left, they want to simply change the rules altogether. And I think that one reason why people are hearing this dark winter message perhaps is going to tie into why folks want to change the way in which we conduct our elections. AMAC is keeping a close eye. We need to do everything we can to ensure that there's less fraud and that it's harder for people to cheat, not easier for people to cheat. Congressman, thank you so much, because your breadth, your life experience, all of it is just really very helpful. And we love to see this leadership in Washington. It is so greatly appreciated, because we're constantly fighting the good fight. And we appreciate the issues and focus and the energy and effort that you bring to this fight also.
Well, thank you. And thank you for everything that y'all do. And please, everyone, keep the faith. Make sure you get to the ballot box. Make sure your voice is heard.
Well, thank you. We definitely hope to see you again soon. We'd love to have you back with us when you have a little bit more time. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to thank everybody who tuned in to listen to this great interview. To please tell your friends and family to join or renew your AMAC membership. And if you haven't downloaded the AMAC News app, you can watch, you can listen to today's podcast, track breaking news wherever you are. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button, like, follow, and share. wherever you are on social media. Until next time, everyone, I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your podcast, Better for America. Thank you for being here. God bless you and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Better for America podcast. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.